Sometimes a story comes along that just seems impossible. Imagine this: a huge cricket nation, a team followed by nearly 200 million passionate fans, just removed, kicked out of the T20 World Cup only weeks before it was supposed to start. Well, it happened. And this is the story of how a single player's contract spiraled into a political crisis that saw Bangladesh make a stunning exit from cricket's biggest stage.
So the big question is, how on earth does that even happen? How do you get from a club contract to an entire nation being booted from the World Cup? Well, it's a story about dominoes. One seemingly small event just tips over, knocking into the next and then the next until the whole thing escalates into this massive international incident. So let's trace it back step by step and figure out how that very first domino fell.
Okay, so everything, and I mean everything, kicks off with one guy. Not some new government policy, not a protest, but one of the biggest stars in Bangladeshi cricket, who found himself right in the middle of a storm that he had absolutely nothing to do with creating.
So let's meet our central figure, Mustafizur Rahman. This guy is a phenomenal fast bowler, a genuine national hero in Bangladesh. Back in December, he lands this huge contract, over $1.5 million Australian dollars, to play in the Indian Premier League, the IPL. We're talking the richest, most high-profile T20 league on the planet. He was all set for a huge season with the Kolkata Knight Riders. But as it turns out, that dream season was never going to happen.
And this is where things just escalate fast. On January 3rd, literally just weeks after he signed that massive contract, the Indian Cricket Board orders his team to release him. The reason they gave? A huge online backlash in India. Well, the Bangladesh government immediately protested, calling it a political attack. And before you know it, the National Cricket Board announced it would flat out boycott any World Cup matches held on Indian soil. A player's club contract had officially blown up into a full-blown national standoff.
Right. So a player gets dropped from a club team. Happens all the time. How does that become an international incident? To really get that, we have to pull back the curtain and look at the incredibly volatile political firestorm that was already brewing in the background. This was never just about cricket.
That online outrage we mentioned, the one that led to Rahman's contract being torn up, it was being fueled by reports of attacks against the Hindu minority community back in Bangladesh. Right-wing groups in India really seized on these stories, and the narrative became, why should a Bangladeshi player be allowed to play and earn money in the IPL while this is allegedly happening? Now here's where things get really fascinating and, frankly, a bit murky. Just look at the massive gap in how this violence was being reported. You had the Bangladesh government, which acknowledged around 645 incidents, but said, look, only about 11% of those were actually communal. But then you have India's Ministry of External Affairs citing over 2,900 incidents and calling it a recurring pattern. And the UN? They just described it as widespread. The two countries couldn't even agree on the basic reality of the situation on the ground. And to give you a sense of what was being reported by human rights groups and the media, the allegations were incredibly severe. We're talking about the vandalism of over 100 temples, mob violence and arson, people being forced from their land, gender-based violence, and even mob lynchings over claims of blasphemy. It was this deeply, deeply charged environment that turned a simple cricket contract into a massive political flashpoint. So, with all that political tension just boiling over, it very quickly led to this unprecedented diplomatic showdown between the Bangladesh Cricket Board and the sport's global governing body, the International Cricket Council, or the ICC. Bangladesh's position was, honestly, crystal clear. Their cricket board president, Aminul Islam Bulbul, summed it up perfectly. He said, "Our only demand is to play the World Cup, but not in India." Their whole argument was, look, if our star player isn't considered safe enough to play in your club league, the IPL, how can you possibly guarantee the safety of our entire national team for the World Cup? What you got was a complete and total diplomatic deadlock. On one side, you have Bangladesh saying, hey, our security concerns aren't just speculation, they stem from a real incident, the removal of our player. They demanded their games be moved to the co-host nation, Sri Lanka. And on the other side, you have the ICC saying, well, our independent security folks found no credible threat, and moving venues this close to the tournament just isn't happening. It's not feasible. Neither side was willing to budge an inch. Now, to try and strengthen their case, Bangladesh pointed to what they saw as a glaring double standard. See, just a year earlier, in 2025, the ICC had actually moved all of India's Champions Trophy matches out of Pakistan because India had raised security concerns. So Bangladesh was basically asking the ICC, wait a minute, why were their security concerns valid enough to move an entire tournament schedule, but ours are being dismissed? It was a really powerful accusation of hypocrisy.
So, with neither side backing down, the whole situation was just hurtling towards its inevitable and pretty messy conclusion. A final decision had to be made, and the consequences for Bangladesh cricket were going to be absolutely immense. Let's just start with this number. 29.5 million US dollars. Just let that sink in. That was the estimated total financial hit the Bangladesh Cricket Board was looking at for taking the stand. I mean, that is a staggering, potentially crippling amount of money for any sports federation.
So where does that crazy number come from? Well, let's break it down. First, they were losing up to $500,000 in just participation fees. Then there was a potential $2 million fine from the ICC. But the real killer, the most devastating blow, was forfeiting up to $27 million in their share of the tournament's revenue. To put that in perspective, that's roughly 60% of the board's entire annual income. Gone.
But the cost wasn't just financial. What about the players themselves? What did they think? Well, according to one of them, who had to speak anonymously, they weren't even asked. The player said it was a direct order from the government and that the team's consent was never even sought. Just like that, their World Cup dreams were snatched away without them having any say in it at all.
And so, on January 24th, 2026, the hammer finally fell. With Bangladesh still refusing to travel to India, the ICC made its final move and officially ejected them from the tournament. It was the first time ever that a major, full-member nation was kicked out of a World Cup. Their spot was given to Scotland, which was the next highest-ranked team that hadn't qualified. Just wow. When you step back, you realize this whole saga is about so much more than just one sports dispute. It's really a symptom of a much larger issue. It exposes this deep geopolitical fault line, where cricket in South Asia has stopped being just a game and has become an arena for national rivalries and power plays. To really get what's going on here, we have to talk about this concept called soft power. It's basically when countries use their culture, things like music, movies, or yes, sports, to influence other countries and achieve political goals, instead of using military force. And in South Asia, for decades, cricket has been the ultimate soft power tool. But lately, it feels less like a tool and more like a weapon. And you can see evidence of cricket becoming this political battleground all over the region. You've got Bangladesh's boycott right here. You have India's longstanding refusal to play in Pakistan. You even had Pakistan threatening to pull out of this very World Cup in solidarity with Bangladesh. All of this is happening at the same time as other symbolic acts, like a controversial book cover depicting parts of India as Greater Bangladesh, just keep adding fuel to the fire. The sport is now completely tangled up in these regional power plays. So it all leads us to this one fundamental and pretty tough question. When a sport like cricket becomes a battlefield for politics, who really ends up losing? Is it the players, who lose a once-in-a-lifetime chance to compete? Is it the millions of fans who are robbed of the chance to cheer for their heroes? Or is it the sport itself, which starts to lose its unique power to bring people together in a world that seems more and more divided every day?